Shalom, friends. Thank you for joining me for the Covenant of Fire, Children of Light Hebraic study. The scripture tells us that if we seek Yah, then He will seek us. That means that He sees us when we seek Him. Scripture also tells us that Yah repeatedly sets aside people who are rebellious to His ways, like Cain, and promotes others in their place, like Seth, because Yah sees. Yah is the Elohim who sees everything. Let's start looking at our covenants by studying Abraham's covenant of Genesis 21. And Abraham said, "For these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take out of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well." Wherefore he called that place Be'er Sheba, because there they swear both of them. Thus they made a covenant at Be'er Sheba. Now, Be'er Sheba means well of the sevenfold oath. And the word witness, edah, means testimony, specifically a recorder or a prince witness, a chief witness. And the word swear, Sheba, to seven oneself or to take an oath. Now, I've talked in previous studies about the significance of the number 7 and the sevenfold oath. So anytime we talk about covenants, we're going to be talking about the importance of the number 7. If you notice, Abraham uses 7 lambs to bind the covenant and to serve as an observable sign or witness. This seems reminiscent to me of the sevenfold rainbow that Yah provided for Noah after he swore to never destroy the earth with the flood again. This also appears to add significance to the 7 units of time, which Yah calls a day in the week of creation. Yah's covenant with Adam was fairly simple and straightforward. If you serve me faithfully, then I will provide for your spirit and your body, your flesh. But if you serve your flesh outside of the boundaries that I've created, then you will die. Pretty simple. The covenant terms with Noah were nearly identical to the terms that Yah established with Adam, except that instead of forbidden fruit, Yah instead forbid Noah and his descendants from eating blood and from committing murder. We read in Genesis 9, verses 3 through 6, "Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require, at the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man, and at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of Elohim made he man." So with Adam, it was, if you eat the forbidden fruit, you will surely die. But with Noah, it was, if you eat blood or commit murder, you will surely die, because man was created in Yah's image. So, once again, with Noah as with Adam, Yah promises to provide everything as long as mankind stays within the clear boundaries that He established. Now, here's some points to ponder. Have you ever pondered why Yah's stated reason for not eating blood or committing murder, which is also a blood sin, is because we are created in His image? I think this is a question which those who categorically deny that God could ever appear as a man on earth, much less die, must address. How does this not indicate that Yah Himself has blood which can be spilled if we're created in His image? Particularly in verse 5, where Yah plainly says that He will require it at the hand of every man's brother. What would you suppose would happen if Yah did have a son who came and died at the hand of his brothers? What if his blood cried out for vengeance like Abel's blood? instead of forgiveness, like Yeshua's blood. Secondly, the 2 commandments he gave Noah are automatic death sentences. This is important because the blood sins appear again in Acts 15 as a requirement for the Gentiles to obey before they can enter the synagogues on the Sabbath to learn the Torah, or the Mosaic Law. Keep in mind that this council occurred at least 15 years after Yeshua's death and resurrection. Don't you think that this is why Yeshua said that hating your brother without cause puts you in danger of judgment? He seems to be connecting Leviticus 19:17 with Genesis 9:5 and the death penalty offense. And thirdly, every covenant which Yah makes with mankind is ratified with blood, which makes the likelihood that blood was shed in the Garden of Eden when Yah covenanted with Adam seem particularly high to me. I've always wondered why those animal skins just happened to be laying around when Yah made clothes for Adam and Eve. Did Yah clothe them in the very skins of the animals he had used to covenant with them? It just never seemed like Yah's character to me that he would warn Adam of a death penalty if he had no concept of death. How would that have been meaningful to Adam in any way? In chapter 1 of Genesis, Yah tells us that he saw 7 times in the first 6 days of creation. That may not seem significant yet, but I hope that it will gain significance as we dig deeper. He is always watching and listening. The scriptures clearly points this out in a story centered on a perhaps surprising character. We see this in the story of Sarah's bondwoman, Hagar. Consider this. Twice the angel of Yah came to comfort a slave girl. In Genesis 16:10-11 we read, "And the angel of Yah said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude." Yes, that's right. Yah promised to multiply her seed, just as he had promised to multiply Abraham's seed. I don't know how many times I've read this story and completely missed that. And in verse 11, "And the angel of Yah said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because Yah hath heard thy affliction." Now the word affliction means misery, humbled, oppressed. Yah had heard Hagar's misery, her oppression, how she had been humbled. And he tells her to name her son Ishmael, which is 2 words together, Shema, which means to hear or hear, and El, or God, Elohim. So Ishmael means Elohim hears you. The very name by which she would call her son every day was a reminder that Elohim was listening to her and cared about her suffering. But wait, it gets even better. In Genesis 16:13, it says, "And she called the name of Yah that spoke unto her, Thou Elohim seest me, El Roi. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me?" In plain English, she says, "Have I also seen him that seeth me?" What did she see? Did she indeed see his back, like Moses did, as the text appears to imply? El Roi, Elohim sees me. Admittedly, Hagar got swept up into the middle of the beautiful love story of Abraham and Sarah through no fault of her own, which was surely an uncomfortable position for anyone. In fact, Hagar became Sarah's bondwoman when Pharaoh came between Abraham and Sarah, and things didn't go so well for the Pharaoh either. You know, as a woman, it especially stirs my love for Yah Elohim when I read how Yah saw hurting women and acted directly on their behalf, like in these verses. Or in Genesis 29:31, and Yah saw that Leah was hated. He opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. He also had compassion on Tamar, the unfortunate daughter-in-law of Judah. His compassion for the despised and unloved wives of the Bible literally brings me to tears. It's so easy to overlook these gentle moments when Yah Elohim was moved with compassion over the hurting hearts of his daughters. He also has great compassion for widows and for orphans. In Psalm 27:10 we read, "When my father and my mother forsake me, then Yah will take me up." Yah has such mercy and compassion for his people. He truly sees everything, even our hurts. But Yah also sees the evil deeds of mankind, and he judges them accordingly. For example, we read in Scripture that Yah Elohim is always watching us. In Genesis 6:5, and Elohim saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And in Genesis 6:12, and Elohim looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. In Genesis 31:12, and he said, "Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee." He's talking to Jacob. He'd been treated so unfairly by his father-in-law. And then in the judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah, Elohim says in Genesis 18:21, "I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know." So Yah says that he will go down and see for himself. And the next thing we know, Abraham is entertaining strangers and then bargaining with Yah over destroying the cities. It certainly appears that Yah Elohim can manifest as a living, breathing, eating human being. I'd just like to point out that he also eats meat. They had a calf, red meat. Have you ever noticed that Yah gives the good news of the promised son Isaac's impending birth directly to Abraham and Sarah? What fun that must have been for Yah. Anyway, there's a point I want to make in this story, and that is what happens to the wicked men of Sodom who attempt to assault the angels and have their way with them. In Genesis 19:10-11, it says, "But the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them, and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door." So first, the door was shut, and they were locked out. Secondly, they were blinded. Their eyes were dark, and they only walked in darkness. And thirdly, notice that it says both small and great, which is generally a euphemism for both rich and poor alike. Their sins weren't based on high or low socioeconomic status. In fact, their desire for wickedness seems to have united them. In Luke chapter 11, verses 33-36, we read, "No man, when he hath lighted a lamp, putteth it in a secret place, neither under a bushel, but on a candlestick, that they which come in may see the light. The light of the body is the eye. Therefore, when thine eye is single, or good, thy whole body also is full of light. But when thine eye is evil, thy body also is full of darkness. Take heed, therefore, that the light which is in thee be not darkness. If thy whole body, therefore, be full of light, having no part dark, the whole shall be full of light, as when the bright shining of a lamp doth give thee light." It's interesting that a central message in the Dead Sea Scrolls is that there are sons of light and sons of darkness, which are determined by whether we walk after the light of the Son of righteousness or we walk according to what seems right in our own eyes, which is called darkness and death. Do we walk in the light or do we walk in the dark or in the night? If our eyes pursue evil, then we are walking in darkness and death. But if we pursue righteousness by seeking to do that which is right in Yah Elohim's eyes, then we are filled with light. The sons of darkness were deceived through observations of their eyes, rather than listening to the word of Yah Elohim and walking in his commandments, the light. They are compared to the fallen watchers who taught mankind to focus on sin and rebel like the serpent in the garden. Sin and wickedness begin with the eye focusing on evil and leads to contemplating sin and then acting upon it. We know that first Eve was deceived by focusing on the forbidden fruit, and later others followed after wickedness through observations made with their eyes. For example, in Genesis 6:2, it says, "The sons of Elohim saw the daughters of Adam, man, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And Yah said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So the fleshly nature was so powerful, Yah said, I can't deal with them for hundreds and hundreds of years. Their lifespans are going to be 120 years. Or he's saying that it will be 120 years until the flood and the destruction. Or it could be both, 120 years till the flood, and they won't live more than 120 years. In Genesis 6 verse 5 it says, And Elohim saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Our eyes can lead us into the straight paths of righteousness and life, or the broken paths of wickedness and death. In a sermon on the flood in the Dead Sea Scrolls in 4Q 370, we read, He decked out the mountains with food, heaping up sustenance upon them, satisfying everyone with succulent fruit. All who do my will may eat and be satisfied, says Yah. Then shall they bless my holy name. But thereafter they did what I regard as evil, says Yah. And they rebelled against Elohim in following their own designs. So Yah judged them according to all their practices, according to the designs arising from their evil hearts. So the downfall of mankind and the law of sin and death all began in the Garden of Eden. We know that the serpent was more cunning than all the creatures because he realized that all he had to do was get Eve to focus intently on the forbidden fruit. Eve did the rest herself. She began to contemplate, rationalize, and justify her fleshly desire for the fruit. The more she focused on her physical desires and internal feelings, the less she focused on Elohim, his blessings, and most importantly, his commandment. We know that Adam walked in disobedience, resulting in death, and Yeshua walked in obedience, resulting in eternal life. The first Adam and the last Adam, Yeshua. In Luke 11, Yeshua is talking to the Pharisees, the scribes, and the lawyers. Now, Pharisees made up religious laws, and the scribes wrote the laws, and the lawyers argued the points of the laws, similar to secular judicial and legislative systems today. As the light of the world, Yeshua is calling them all hypocrites. He is telling them that they act like they care about the people, but that in reality they are burdening the people with laws that they themselves refuse to follow. Does that sound familiar? They used Moses as their legal authority to do so, while acting contrary to the words of Moses. Yeshua says that if they were the children of Abraham, then they would do as Abraham did. But instead, they killed the prophets that Yah sent to remind them to obey his voice. Abraham walked in faith, and as a result of his faith, we read in Genesis 26, verses 4 and 5, I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So Abraham's faith resulted in obedience. We also saw that Yah called Noah righteous before him, and we see such high praise is also given to Job, who made it a point to keep his eyes on righteousness, so that his body would follow paths of righteousness. In Job 31, 1 through 3, it says, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of Elohim is there from above, and what inheritance of the Almighty from on high? Is not destruction to the wicked, and a strange punishment to the workers of iniquity? Job was determined to control his eyes so that his mind would not be tempted to justify and rationalize his body committing iniquity, which is lawlessness, or literally to be without law. Satan is very cunning. Job knew that at your lowest moment, perhaps after the 20th fight with your spouse over the same unresolved issue, when your mind is already contemplating how you deserve a much better partner and how you completely married the wrong person. I pay all the bills around here. I do all the work. They never help me. Satan will come along and make sure to provide an attractive alternative. Someone who suddenly stands out as an amazing person. Someone who seems to just really get you. The solution to all of your problems suddenly appears right before your eyes. Everything that life could be and should be is within reach, and you deserve to be happy. In fact, God wants you to be happy, right? Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things, and desperately wicked. Who can know it? The consequences of a broken marriage and hurting children completely disappear into the fantasy of how great the life you deserve would be. And you rationalize. The kids will get over it eventually. And because you're happy, you'll be a better parent, a better person. You'll even probably live longer and die happier. You don't even realize that sin has deceived you and that your lamp is extinguished. We have to keep our eyes on the straight path. Your eye is wicked and your body is full of darkness. You're drifting out of your lane, and it's just a matter of time before you find yourself bouncing off the guardrail at 100 miles an hour and careening into oncoming traffic. Job takes this scenario straight to its final conclusion: destruction of the wicked and eternal punishment. Job's eye was good. It was focused on the straight path. It was focused on obeying the laws of Yah Elohim, and as a result, his body was full of light. In today's society, Satan uses pornography to entrap men, a hidden, dark, secret obsession, which is focused 100% on the flesh. And the longer you focus on your own flesh, the more dissatisfied you feel with your life and your relationships. The end of that road is a fiery wreck of broken families, crying children, and justifying and rationalizing one sin after another. In the same way, Satan uses television, movies, and music to justify, rationalize, and even romanticize sin to ensnare women through their eyes and by manipulating their emotions. The result is a culture focused on serving themselves, pleasing their flesh, and doing what is right in their own eyes continually, rather than laying down their life for another. As Yeshua said, the love of many will grow cold as lawlessness without law increases in the earth. Yah created Adam and Eve as lamps to hold the light of righteousness and reproduce offspring of light, so that the whole world would be filled with the righteous light of Yah, and the darkness would flee away. The Garden of Eden was like a lamp sitting on the lampstand of the world, a shining beacon on a hill. When Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, Yah placed cherubim, or angels, and a flaming sword in front of the entrance to the garden. Perhaps the flaming sword represents Yeshua, who is described in Revelation as having a double-edged sword coming out of his mouth to judge righteously. It's an interesting connection. Yeshua clearly says that no one comes to the Father except through him. And when Yeshua was transfigured into a being of light, Moses and Elijah appeared on either side of him, perhaps like the cherubim that were with the flaming sword. Moses represents the law, and Elijah represents the prophets who testified against the people who were walking in lawlessness, doing what seemed right in their own eyes. Throughout Scripture, we see that those who walked in obedience, like Abel and Noah, were a witness to those who walked in rebellion, those that were only pleasing themselves, instead of seeking the will of Yah Elohim. In Genesis 6:5 we read, "And Elohim saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." When Yah sent the flood waters, the earth essentially reverted back to the state it was in before the first creation began, with the notable exception of Noah, who was still a burning lamp of righteousness. He obviously was in the ark. After the flood, Yah made another covenant of light, using the rainbow as a sign of his commitment to preserve the righteous, those who live to serve him, instead of serving only themselves. Noah lived a total of 950 years. His life was extended, like all of those who lived long lifespans before Yah decreed that man would only live 120 years in Genesis 6. I speculate that Shem may have already been born before Yah made that decree, because Shem lived long enough to have seen Isaac, the promised son, born to Abraham. Not saying he did, but he lived long enough that he could have. Can you imagine the evil that mankind accomplished when they lived many hundreds of years? 120 years ago, there were no cars, no airplanes, air conditioners, televisions, radios, or smartphones. 120 years ago, man still traveled by boat, horseback, and in buggies, which they had done for millennia. Imagine what mankind would be capable of accomplishing if we lived 700 to 900 years and all spoke the same language. All over the world today, we find evidence of advanced technologies that we still cannot replicate. Where did these come from? And why do we imagine that Noah built a crude ark instead of a masterpiece? Where would mankind be today if Yah Elohim hadn't mixed up the languages and forcefully separated the people after the flood at the Tower of Babel? Just think of it. With incredibly long lifespans and everyone speaking one language, mankind could have easily surpassed all of the modern technological abilities of the past 4,500 years easily within those 1,600 years before the flood. Rather than discovering new technologies, we may simply be rediscovering ancient pre-flood technology, and we still don't have what they had. After all, we were made in the image of Yah Elohim, with an incredible capacity for creativity and intelligence. The possibilities of what they were able to accomplish before the flood is mind-boggling. However, at the time of Noah's flood, the earth wasn't quite 1,700 years old, But it was so wicked and full of darkness that Yah swept it clean and started again with Noah and his family. Yah tells Noah that he sees righteousness in him. He saw a good eye and a body full of light, walking in obedience to his ways. This is why the scriptures say in Isaiah 8:20, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. Did you ever notice that after the fall, when the Spirit of Yah walked through the Garden of Eden, he asked Adam and Eve, "Where are you?" Adam and Eve's lamps had gone dark, but Yah Elohim loved the world, his creation, so much that he sent his only son Yeshua to stand as a light on the hill. The very fact that Yah didn't want Adam and Eve to remain in darkness forever, so he guarded the entrance to the holy place, means that someday it can be entered into once again. In fact, we read in Revelation 22, verses 14 through 15, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city. For without," or outside the city, "are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers," that's sexually immoral, "and murderers and idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie." Isn't that amazing? You have the right to the tree of life. Not just that you get a chance to have some, but you actually have a right to walk in and eat the fruit off of it. When Yeshua taught about the eye being a lamp and the body being full of light or darkness, he was telling us who he was and teaching about the tabernacle and the temple. Take, for example, the symbolism of the almond, the barley grains, the wheat grains, the grapes, and the olives, which are a reminder that Yah sees us. They're all shaped like eyes. He is watching for those who are seeking him and seeking to do his will, dedicated to lighting the path of righteousness for others. At every first fruits, he is scanning to and fro for lamps that are lit and shining brightly, prepared to light the path of Yeshua's soon return by walking as Yeshua walked. It says in Matthew 7:21, "Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven." And in Matthew 12, verse 50, "For whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother." And in John 6, verse 38, "For I came down from heaven not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me." He came to do the will of the Father. We read in Amos 8, verses 2 through 3, "And he said, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, A basket of summer fruit. Then Yah said unto me, The end is come upon my people of Israel. I will not again pass by them any more. And the songs of the temple shall be howlings in that day, saith Yah Elohim. There shall be many dead bodies in every place. They shall cast them forth with silence." Makes you think of a horrified silence. So many dead bodies. In Amos 8, verse 7, we read, "And Yah hath sworn by the excellency of Jacob, surely I will never forget any of their works." And in verse 9, "And it shall come to pass in that day, says Yah Elohim, that I will cause the sun to go down at noon, and I will darken the earth in the clear day." Verse 11, "Behold, the days come, saith Yah Elohim, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yah. And they shall wander from sea to sea, and from the north even to the east. They shall run to and fro to seek the word of Yah, and shall not find it." The basket of summer fruit is a prophecy. It represents the grapes and the olives harvested during the summer months. Yah is telling Amos that the temple would be destroyed and the wicked punished for their evil deeds. The first fruits of new wine occurs on the 3rd day of the 5th month, which is called Tirosh, meaning sweet wine. But it is more commonly known as the month of Av. If you'll recall, the second temple was destroyed on the 10th of Av in 70 AD. 7 days after the first fruits of new wine on the Zadok priestly calendar. This day of first fruits is referenced again in Revelation as the time when the wicked are thrown into the winepress of Yah's wrath. In fact, rabbinic tradition holds that the first temple was also destroyed on the 10th of Av by the Babylonians. So we see that there is a precedence for the first fruits of new wine to be a time when judgment falls. In verse 9, Yah prophesied that this would occur following a special sign, a day when the sun would appear to go down at noon and it would grow dark on a clear day. So apparently it's not dark because of the clouds. On the day of Yeshua's crucifixion, we read in Matthew 27:45, "Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land unto the 9th hour." Isn't that interesting? Yeshua prophesied that the generation that he was preaching to would not pass until they had paid for the deaths of the prophets who had come to warn them to turn back and to walk in righteous paths before Yah. Rabbinic literature records that for the 40 years leading up to 70 AD and the destruction of the temple, the red cord never turned white again on the Day of Atonement, signifying that Yah did not give the nation absolution of their sins. If you'll recall, when Moses and the Israelites came out of Egypt, and then they did not enter into the land because they rebelled, Yah gave them another 38 years. They had a total of 40 years from the time they left Egypt until they entered into the promised land with the second generation. There was a 40-year judgment. Here it appears to be another 40-year judgment from the time of Yeshua's ministry until the temple was destroyed. Now let's look at the prophecy of the almond tree. In Jeremiah 1:11, "Moreover, the word of Yah came unto me, saying, Jeremiah, what seest thou? And I said, I see a rod of an almond tree." Here we see a play on words. When Yah asked Jeremiah, "What do you see?" and he responds, "I see the rod of an almond tree." Then Yah uses the same word again, but this time in the context of hasten. The word tree isn't in the text, but it's added because it's implied. The rod or branch of an almond becomes a tree. The word shaked or almond means haste or passion. So called because it is the first tree to arouse and awaken from the sleep of winter, like it's eager or passionate to begin bearing fruit. The root word for almond is shakad, and that means sleepless, to watch over, to attend, or to watch intently. So Yah asked Jeremiah, "What do you see with your eyes?" And Jeremiah responds that he sees an almond tree, which also means to watch intently. Then Yah said unto me, "Thou hast well seen, for I will hasten, shakad, my word to perform it." The almond is associated with passionate haste and watching intently. Do you recall where we first see the mention of a rod of an almond tree? Think about that for a moment. The light of the menorah is fueled by pure beaten olive oil contained in 7 almond-shaped lamps. The lights on the menorah were always to face forward, shining on the 12 tribes of Israel, represented by the 12 loaves on the table of showbread. So we understand that the children of Israel are always to reside in the light of the menorah, the sun, S-U-N, of righteousness. and have no portion with darkness. An important part of the Aaronic priest's duties required keeping watch over the menorah all night, from evening until morning, to make sure that it never ran out of oil, which would plunge the temple into darkness. If a priest slumbered or slept, thereby failing to keep watch over the oil, then the children of Israel would symbolically enter into spiritual darkness, as represented by the 12 loaves on the table of showbread being plunged into literal darkness. The root word for showbread is lakam, and it means to fight, to do battle, to engage in war. According to Amos 8, verses 11 through 12, when the temple was destroyed, spiritual darkness descended, bringing a famine for the word. Now, did you remember where we read about the rod of an almond tree? Did you think it was in Numbers 17:8? And it came to pass that on the morrow Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi was budded, and brought forth buds, and bloomed blossoms, and yielded almonds. That's right, it was Aaron's rod. Here is a picture from a tabernacle presentation at one of the Sukkots that I attended briefly last year. The display was very large, and the furniture and the robes and everything were all handcrafted. The presentation was really well done, and it was a very moving experience. Honestly, it's going to be hard to top that Sukkot experience anytime soon. It was amazing how much light was produced by that single large menorah. The menorah also represents the branch, or the Messiah, the anointed one. Like Aaron's rod, which budded and produced almonds amongst the 12 rods, the branch would come forth to bud and produce fruit in the 12 tribes of Israel. Upon the Messiah's shoulders would rest the atonement which would reverse the curse of sin and death from the Garden of Eden. The almond-shaped lamps on the menorah represent 7 eyes, which are good eyes, so that the whole body, or the whole temple, is filled with light. Again, 7 is the foundation of an oath, or a covenant. Now we know that darkness has no portion with light, and it was not allowed in the presence of Yah. Paul points this out in his letter to the Corinthians, in chapter 6, verses 14 through 18. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of Elohim with idols? For ye are the temple of the living Elohim, as Elohim hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith Yah, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. And I will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith Yah Almighty. We are called to be a holy nation, set apart and consecrated to Yah Elohim, just like Adam and Eve were created to be set apart and holy. Now, can you see the contrast in the verse above? Under a burning lamp, you would find righteousness, light, which equals obedience, Yeshua the Messiah, faithful believers, the temple of Yah, and cleanliness. But on the extinguished lamp side, we have unrighteousness, darkness, which equals rebellion and death, Belial, or the serpent, infidels, the unbelieving, the faithless, idols and idolatry, and the unclean things. Can you see why you are called the temple of the living Elohim, the eternal life-giving spirit, the neshama high breath, which Adam lost, is restored to those who believe upon the promised Son of Yah Elohim and his atonement. Like Adam once did, we can walk as children of light, filled with the neshama high wherever we go, and his presence is within us, and shines out of us. The temple menorah lit the path directly to the Holy of Holies, where Yah Elohim dwelt upon the mercy seat, or the seat of satisfaction, directly above the tables of stone. The stone tables contain the 10 Commandments, originally written by the finger of Yah Elohim himself. The testimony, also called the Ark of the Covenant, was created to protect the tablets of stone. Next to these stone tables resided Aaron's rod, the branch, which matched the menorah as an almond tree, and the pot of hidden manna reserved for the sons of Aaron, Yah's most holy and set-apart servants. Now, the concept of our bodies being the temple of Yah is not a New Testament concept. We already saw that Job referenced this long before the New Testament was written, in Job 18:5-6. Yea, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine. The light shall be dark in his tabernacle, and his candle shall be put out with him. That's pretty severe. Cast into outer darkness, not a fun place to go. Now in Leviticus 26:9-12 it says, For I will have respect unto you, and make you fruitful, and multiply you, and establish my covenant with you, and ye shall eat old store, and bring forth the old because of the new. And I will set my table among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. And I will walk among you, and will be your Elohim, and ye shall be my people. Does this perhaps remind you of the covenants that Yah swore with Adam and Noah? Yah promised to tabernacle with us and claim us as his own if we will serve him fully and be a set-apart and holy people walking in his commandments. This is why he commands each of us to live in temporary dwellings or tabernacles for 7 days every year at the Feast of Sukkot. How much more clear can he be that our bodies are a temple where his Spirit dwells, he in us and us in him? Now let's consider Abraham's seed. Yeshua says that if we are Abraham's children, then we will do what Abraham did. Obedience to his commandments will be our fruit, and his name will be blessed in us. In Genesis 26:4-5 it says, And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice, and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. In Hebrew 11:4 it says, By faith Abel offered unto Elohim a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, Elohim testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. Now why did Abel's blood still speak from the ground? Because he was a brightly burning lamp, the very first martyr to die for the sake of truth, walking in the commandments of Yah even unto death. In Revelation 6:9 we read, And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of Elohim, and for the testimony which they held. Now let's compare Abraham to the remnant seed described in the book of Revelation. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice, and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And then there's the remnant of the woman's seed, which is Abraham's seed. It's a remnant, just a little bit left over. In Revelation 12:17 it says, And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Elohim, and have the testimony of Yeshua the Messiah. As always, it is the unwavering steadfastness of the saints that brings outrage, just like it did with Cain towards his brother Abel. The altar of incense represents the prayers of the saints and martyrs like Abel and the other prophets who died at the hands of wicked men, beginning with Cain. hypocrites full of darkness, who swore falsely by Abraham and Moses, using Yah's name while rejecting the law of Elohim and despising anyone who testified of it. Yeshua prophesied that the religious leaders would kill him, and he told his followers to pick up their cross and follow him, because they too would be hated and despised by the people who would think they were doing Yah favor when they took their lives. When they committed murder, they actually are able to justify committing murder. Wow. Yeshua was accused of blasphemy against Yah Elohim, and so was Stephen. Stephen was the first martyr after Yeshua's resurrection who spoke out of true love for his brethren when he implored them to stop loving the lies and begin walking in truth again. Today, Stephen would be labeled hateful, bigoted, and intolerant. Go read Stephen's message and consider how it would be received on the street corners where you live, or even in many of your local churches. In John 8:44, Yeshua says, "Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do." He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there's no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, and the father of it. Wow, that's really strong. Cain and the religious leaders were hypocrites. They swore falsely by the name of Elohim, making his name empty, making it vain. They took his name in vain. I believe that the scroll of Zechariah 5 represents the law of Elohim bringing judgment upon those who have stolen his sheep and sworn falsely by his name. Yeshua brings his reward with him when he returns, whether a reward unto life or unto death. He's coming with a double-edged sword. Now let's take a look at Matthew 25, beginning with verses 1 through 5. Then the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 virgins, or 10 maidens, who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. But while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. Now, here are my thoughts about this parable. I believe that this is called the parable of the 10 virgins because they are all professing believers in Yeshua. All 10 of the maidens had lamps, which represent the word of Yah. That's fairly obvious from Psalms 119, verses 105 and 106. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. I have sworn, and I will perform it, that I will keep thy righteous judgments. Now, one thing that's really interesting is that the stanzas in this part of the Psalms are laid out by letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The letter Nun represents seed, which should make us recall the concept of seed-bearing fruit in the image itself, and make us consider Abraham and his promised seed, as well as John and Yeshua's rebuke of the Pharisees, scribes, and lawyers, particularly when they claimed to be the children or the seed of Abraham. In the parable of the 10 virgins, we see that there are 10 seeds, or 10 claims, to be part of the children of Abraham. But not all of them produced the end product of Abraham's seed, which, in this example, is the olive oil to light the way for the bridegroom Yeshua. They are holding lamps to produce light for the bridegroom's path. This should call to mind that John the Immerser was sent ahead of Yeshua to make straight the paths for his first coming, and he is compared to Elijah the prophet. If you'll recall, Elijah turned the hearts of the children back to their Father in heaven. Now, there's some debate in regards to what it means that the wise virgins took oil in their vessels. When I read it, it appears to me that they took oil in their vessels with their lamps. Now, a lamp is a vessel, but the foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. So I'm looking at it thinking that the foolish virgins went with pretty much dry lamps, but the wise put oil in their vessels, which is the lamp. The lamp is the vessel. Now, other people can say, well, I think their lamps were full of oil, and then they took an additional vessel of oil with them. And I could see that too. I just tend to lean towards they had their lamps full, and the foolish pretty much just didn't even bother to look and see if they had oil in their lamps when they took them. In Matthew 25, verse 5, it tells us that because the bridegroom was delayed returning, that they all slumbered and slept. Now, this is where I might diverge from some other opinions as well. Sleep is frequently used in Scripture as a euphemism for physical death. If you'll remember, Lazarus wasn't sleeping, he was dead. But the apostles said, oh, it's wonderful that he's sleeping, he's getting better. And Yeshua said, no, I'm telling you he's dead. So we do see that sleep is often used as a reference to actual death. So I believe that all 10 of these virgins could have already died and resurrected when they heard the trumpet call of the Messiah's return, which appears to me, at least in context, to fit with the end of Matthew chapter 24. Now, some of the virgins may have been slumbering, meaning that they weren't actually dead. Maybe they were spiritually dead, or they just weren't paying attention, but they were still alive, because Paul says that some will be alive and remain, and others will be resurrected. And I think this might be a picture of that same exact scenario. So we see that all 10 virgins have lamps, which represent the word of Yah Elohim. The lamps also represent the eye of their bodies, because Yah Elohim is always watching our actions to see if we are full of light or darkness. So in verse 3, we read that the foolish virgins brought lamps, but took no oil with them. That's what I'm thinking. They had the word of Yah, but they didn't bring the light. They didn't bring the righteousness. But the wise virgins brought both the lamps with the oil in them. They had the word and the righteousness together to light the path of Yeshua's return. Continuing in verse 6, and at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are extinguished. They're out. They've gone out. Maybe they had a little bit of oil. Like I said, I'm not sure they even checked their lamps before they left. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. So basically we know that the foolish virgins had bad eyes that were filled with darkness. Although professing to believe in Yeshua before they died, they had prepared no oil, and the flame of the Spirit, which was to lead them into all truth, was extinguished. It's significant to me that the 10 virgins had to prepare the vessels of oil before they died or slept, if you want to say that they were sleeping, because when they awoke, it was too late to get prepared. The 6th day is all about preparation. In fact, it's called Preparation Day. From the manna in the wilderness to the 7th-day Sabbath to the Passover, a strong emphasis is placed on preparation, all of which focus our attention on being prepared for the bridegroom's soon return. I also find verse 9 significant because the wise virgins Tell the foolish to go and buy oil from the sellers. So this appears to indicate that the foolish virgins have no vessels of oil at all, not even in their homes. They don't have any extra lamps or any extra bottles of oil laying around. They have nothing even back at home. Why wouldn't you tell your friends, just go run to your house real quick and grab one and come right back? But they don't. They tell them to go and buy. The virgin's main purpose is to light the path of the returning bridegroom, and yet they don't bother to check their lamps for oil or prepared by bringing additional oil with them. That does seem very foolish indeed. Were these lazy and careless virgins? Did they think that the oil was going to be provided for them? If their lamps are full of darkness, is it because they focused on themselves and walked after what was right in their own eyes before they died or fell asleep? Did they swear falsely by Yah's name? I find Psalm 119, verses 118, very interesting. It says, "Thou hast trodden down all them that err from thy statutes, for their deceit is falsehood." And in verse 126 through 130, "It is time for thee, Yah, to work, for they have made void thy law. Therefore I esteem all thy precepts concerning all things to be right, and I hate every false way." Then it gives us the Hebrew letter Pei, which represents a mouth or speaking. And it says, "Thy testimonies are wonderful. Therefore doth my soul keep them. The entrance of thy words giveth light. It giveth understanding unto the simple." And verses 150 and 152. "They draw nigh that follow after mischief. They are far from thy law. Thou art near, O Elohim, and all thy commandments are truth." What's truth? The commandments. The Holy Spirit leads us into all what? Truth. What is truth? The commandments are truth. "Concerning thy testimonies, I have known of old that thou hast founded them forever." Forever. Not one jot or one tittle will by any means pass away from the law until all is fulfilled. And it's easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one letter of the law to fail. These are all the words of Yeshua. Now, if we continue reading in Matthew chapter 25, verse 11, "Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not." Those are chilling words. In the final books written in the New Testament, as many as 60 years after Yeshua's death and resurrection, we read this warning by the Apostle John. In 1 John 2, 3 through 4, "And hereby we do know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him." Do you think maybe he read the Psalms of David? Maybe he actually knew Psalm 119 really, really well? It would seem to me that he's making a reference to David's writings. Now, I believe that the foolish virgins are the same professing believers who stand before Yeshua in Matthew chapter 7, verses 22 through 27. "Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity," or lawlessness, to be without law, specifically the Mosaic law. "Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, a wise maiden, a wise virgin, which built his house upon a rock. Who's the rock? Yeshua, in his example, is the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And everyone that heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, a foolish virgin, which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. Now in Luke 6:46, Yeshua says, And why call ye me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? Kind of sounds like lip service. And in Luke 13, verse 25 through 28, When once the master of the house is risen up, and hath shut the door, and ye begin to stand without, and to knock at the door, saying, Lord, Lord, open unto us. And he shall answer and say unto you, I know you not, whence you are. Then shall ye begin to say, We have eaten and drunk in thy presence, and thou hast taught in our streets. But he shall say, I tell you, I know not whence you are. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity. Lawlessness. And in Luke 6:46, And why call ye me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things which I say? Kind of sounds like just giving lip service. And in Luke 13, verse 25 through 28, When once the master of the house is risen up, and hath shut the door, and ye begin to stand without, and to knock at the door, saying, Lord, Lord, open unto us. Sounds exactly like the 5 foolish virgins. And he shall answer and say unto you, I know you not, whence ye are. Just like the foolish virgins. Then shall ye begin to say, We have eaten and drunk in thy presence, and thou hast taught in our streets. But he shall say, I tell you, I know you not, whence you are. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity, of lawlessness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, when you shall see Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the prophets in the kingdom of Elohim, and you yourselves are thrust out. So what did Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all of the prophets do? They all walked righteously in the commandments of Yah Elohim. That's why they're going to sit in the kingdom. And the foolish virgins are going to be outside the kingdom knocking on the door, begging to be let in. Now, in Job chapter 18, verse 5, it says, Yea, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine. The light shall be dark in his tabernacle, and his candle shall be put out with him. Sounds like the foolish virgins again. It's easy to imagine that this is simply about keeping the Sabbath day holy, keeping the Passover, and eating only kosher foods. But those things are really the simplest and easiest commandments to follow. The hardest commandments are the 2 greatest commandments, the 2 commandments which all the other commandments undergird and support. The 10 commandments hang upon the 2 greatest commandments. Love Yah with all your heart, soul, and body, or might, and love your neighbor as yourself. So commandments 1 through 4 are all about loving Yah with all your heart, and commandments 5 through 10 are all about loving your neighbor as yourself. Now, Yeshua gave us an example of love and then told us not to simply love our neighbor as ourselves, but to love them as he has loved us. That really raised the bar on that commandment. Is it any wonder that Yeshua taught what Job already knew which was that lusting after a woman who isn't your wife with your eyes is to commit adultery in your heart. Because if your eye is bad or wicked, then your whole body is full of darkness or death. The parable of the 10 virgins ends with these sobering words in Matthew 25:13. Watch, therefore. Again, keep your eyes open. Watch. For ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. Sin is a heart issue that can get your lampstand removed, as Yeshua warned repeatedly. In Revelation chapter 1, verse 20, it says, "The mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks." The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches, or more properly, the assemblies. The Greek word for candlestick is luknia, which literally means a candlestick or candelabrum, like the menorah, which holds 7 lamps. So this is clearly a reference to 7 menorahs. And each of the menorahs holds 7 lamps, for a total of 49 lamps. 7 times 7 equals 49. Which each menorah has an angel or a star watching over it, known as watchers. The stars are also called watchers. 1 angel for each of the candlesticks. Now 49 is a covenant cycle of 7ing, or a 7-fold oath. So these New Testament assemblies are in covenant with Yah Elohim, and Yeshua is emphasizing that he is watching them diligently, judging each lamp and each lampstand. We look at the menorah with the almonds. Remember that the menorah is an almond tree, and each almond-shaped lamp represents an eye. The inside of an almond is white, or you could say full of light. And it is the high priest's responsibility to add or remove lamps in order to keep Yah Elohim's house bright in the darkness of night. Now Yeshua is the branch that is brought forth by the hand or the rod of his Father, who will build the eternal temple and accomplish everything that he started. He already laid the foundation stone, and he will accomplish what he began. He told his disciples that he was going to go to prepare a place for us, so that where he is, we might also be. What is Yeshua preparing? He's preparing an eternal holy place called the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem will never be dark, because it will be filled with the light of his presence, and his faithful servants will be with him day and night. They're the ones that have the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh on their foreheads, engraved on their crowns, just like the high priest. And we are promised that when we see Yeshua, that we will look just like him. We will also be children of light. Yeshua was a good seed. He is a true seed of Abraham because he did what Abraham did. Remember that a seed bears the same fruit that produced it. So if you are a seed of Abraham, then you will do what Abraham did. You will walk in faith and keep his commandments, statutes, precepts, ordinances, judgments, etc. If you have faith in Yeshua, then you will walk as he walked in obedience to the will and commandments of his Father, rather than walking after what seems right in your own wicked eyes, doing what pleases your flesh and being deceived by your heart. You will be the children of light or righteousness, shining in a dark world like Noah was. But you will not be like the Pharisees, who made up their own laws and acted like they were righteous on the outside. They were hypocrites. because they were rejecting the voice of Yah Elohim. The Pharisees, the scribes, the lawyers all had bad or evil eyes, and they were filled with darkness or death. This is why they were called whitewashed sepulchres, full of dead men's bones. They wanted to look holy and righteous on the outside, but on the inside, they were very corrupt. Their hearts were wicked. They were not the children of Abraham, but they were the children of Cain, who brought unacceptable fruit as an offering, and then despised the words of his own brother Abel, whom Yeshua called the first prophet to die for righteousness' sake. So if you look at the diagram, if you're an olive, then you will produce olive seeds, and olive seeds will produce olives, which will produce oil, which will light your lamp. But if you're an olive that doesn't produce fruit, you don't produce olive seeds, and you don't grow more olives, then you don't produce any oil, and your lamp is dark. And that's a picture of death. Now here's something interesting about almonds. An almond is hidden beneath two protective layers. The outer layer is called a drupe. When the almond seed is ripe, the drupe splits open to reveal a hull. The final step is to crack open the hull to reveal the almond seed at the center. Likewise, the identity of Messiah Yeshua was hidden in the scriptures. However, the mystery of his existence was plainly revealed in the almond tree menorah and the 7 almond-shaped lamps of light. Revelation is the English translation of the Greek word apocalypse. Revelation 1:1 starts out the apocalypse of Yeshua the Messiah. Apocalypse literally means laying bare or disclosure. At his second coming, Yeshua will be plainly revealed to the entire world as he truly is, the almond, the eye, the light of the world. In Psalm 40, verses 7 through 9, it says, "Then said I, Lo, I come, in the volume of the book, it is written of me. I delight to do thy will, O my Elohim. Yea, thy law is within my heart. I have preached righteousness in the great congregation. Lo, I have not refrained my lips, O Yah, thou knowest. I have not hid thy righteousness within my heart. I have declared thy faithfulness and thy salvation. I have not concealed thy loving kindness and thy truth from the great congregation." So what was Yeshua doing? He was proclaiming the truth, and he delighted to keep the law and the commandments of Yah Elohim. They were written on his heart. He says in John 12:36, "While ye have light, believe in the light, that ye may be the children of light." These things spake Yeshua, and departed, and did hide himself from them. I just want to leave you with these last few verses. Ephesians 5:8. "For ye were sometimes darkness, but now are ye light in Yah. Walk as children of light." In 1 Thessalonians 5, "Ye are the children of light, and the children of the day." We are not of the night, nor of darkness. We don't walk after darkness. We don't seek darkness for our guidance. We are children of the day, children of light. And in Romans 13, verse 12, "The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light." I pray that we are all inspecting our oil lamps, and that we are adding oil, and that we're praying for the Father to give us more oil, to give us more joy, to give us more obedience, and to help us to reach others with his words and his truth. I know it's a journey. I haven't reached it. I'm still working on it. Father's definitely still working with me, and I know that he's still working with you too. So be of good courage, be of good faith, get into the word, study the word, pray for the Spirit to lead you into all truth. Shalom.